Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session of Administrator Issues and Updates on June 10th, 2025. County Administrator Gary Schmidt, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Roll call. Commissioner Savas.
Present.
Commissioner Helm.
Here.
Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Chair Roberts.
Here. All right, thank you. And Gary, what's next?
Thank you. I know Commissioner West is out of the office. I didn't fail to say that. Your first item today for issues is 2025 wildfire season emergency declaration process briefing. Daniel Neibauer, Director of Disaster Management, will give you a brief presentation. And who's your guest, Daniel?
With me, I have Clackamas Fire District Assistant Chief Dan Mulick, who also serves as the chair of the Clackamas County Fire Defense Board. And I do have offering moral support, Scott West, the Oregon Department of Forestry, Malala Unit Forester. We're here today to update the board on the multi-agency preparedness efforts around wildfire. The County Fire District 1, ODF, and numerous partners developed and participated in 3 preparation events last month. We will use those discussions to briefly talk through a progression of a wildfire incident in the county and the multi-agency response. So if you will, imagine a hot, windy summer day when a brush fire ignites. A quickly evolving fire triggers a chain of coordinated efforts across the county. So let's start off with public alerts and warning. Fires are usually first reported into 911 through CCOM, as it is the largest of the 2 public safety answering points in the county and covers a majority of the unincorporated area. Although I will say the fire could also be detected via wildfire cameras that are there and reported that way. Call takers and dispatchers will assess the situation and send resources via the computer-aided dispatch and relay updates from the field. As the incident escalates, CCOM will activate its liaison from emergency partners, including fire, law, and disaster management. This will bring personnel directly into CCOM to help manage resource allocation. As the incident grows and evacuations become necessary, the fire incident commander will request an evacuation area. Law enforcement, usually CCSO, will confirm and authorize the area, and CCOM usually issues the first alert. If disaster management isn't already at CCOM, they will be following the initial alert and will be assembling an alert and warning unit to take over any subsequent alerts. Moving on to actual evacuations. With an evacuation recommendation issued, the county will be working to update its social media and other channels, update the county evacuation map, place a red banner across the top of the county website so that anybody from any county webpage can easily find the incident webpage that we will be starting with the most up-to-date information regarding that wildfire. CCSO will be sending deputies to properties that are within the level 3 Go Now evacuation zone to confirm community members are aware of the evacuation a recommendation. Using a newly implemented software system, they will be able to note whether community members are choosing to evacuate, to stay, or if they need additional assistance. At this point, the Emergency Operations Center is now further activated and is focusing on safe movement of people and livestock, provision of shelter and mass care, hopefully with our Red Cross and state partners, area security, and believe it or not, we've already begun to consider reunification and re-entry to the area once the wildfire threat has passed. To further facilitate today's discussion, we're going to simulate that the growth of the fire continues. That's going to necessitate further coordination. So the Emergency Operations Center, in coordination with Fire Incident Command, will be starting cooperators calls, probably at first a few times a day, and then eventually daily, and bringing in to those calls all responding and impacted partners. Chief Mulick is going to talk a little bit about how it will further escalate an incident management team could support an ongoing incident.
Yeah, good morning. Dan Mulick, Assistant Chief of Clackamas Fire. Put yourself in the position of the incident command post on that incident of the rapidly escalating fire that we have in the county. We're going to assemble with our mutual aid partners, with the Oregon Department of Forestry, with our local fire agencies around the county and around the Tri-County area. And the incident commander, and as those resources come in, the incident command system is going to be built up into an incident management team on scene and eventually move over to the EOC here at Clackamas County. We look at expanded mutual aid and quickly expediting that process. and looking to unify command with our partners, most likely in this situation with Oregon Department of Forestry. We have contact with a regional mobilization coordinator from the Office of the State Fire Marshal, who the Fire Defense Board Chief, myself, would be in contact with that individual, letting the Salem know exactly the incident on hand and on where it's escalating and the direction that's going to go, and then he can brief his staff at OSFM. At that point, if we'll do a cooperators call with the Office of the State Fire Marshal, the Fire Defense Board Chief, and the Incident Commander, and then they will make the determination at that office if they're going to go to the governor's office for the request to integrate the Conflagration Act. If that happens, then within about 24 hours, we'll have an incident management team from OSFM arrive on incident and work to take over and get a declaration of authority. And I'll turn it back over to Daniel to progress from that part.
Sure. So the incident management team on site will request a delegation of authority for the agency, the jurisdiction having authority, which could be the fire district, could be the state if it's on state lands. If it's an unincorporated part of the county that does not have fire protection, it could be from this board, or a city if it's in there, any combination depending on how big that fire grows. The delegation of authority will identify the time and the limits of the IMT's authority, helping to understand physical constraints, completion of the fire, what are things that need to be protected. As goes through that process. So as we go through there, then we'll finally be at a spot where we might be considering an emergency declaration, and that's where we'll be discussing with county council as well as the county administrator and with you all what that involves. And so if it's determined to do so, that's going to be because we see certain pieces of infrastructure at risk. We have resource needs that are there. We are fortunate enough that the state has been leaning a lot more forward, and we can get a lot more resources from the state without needing that emergency declaration. But of course, the BCC has the authority to declare that state of emergency, and if that happens, if the conversations with county council and county administrator would reach out to the chair, you, Chair Roberts, and if we can pull the board together, we would do so, and if not, we would look to have you sign that delegation of authority, and then once the board can be pulled together to reaffirm that through there. We'll say that the declaration does not guarantee anything. It would be a request up to the state for things. It does not mean that we get federal reimbursement of that. The state has to do a declaration to get a federal declaration as part of that process. A federal declaration can happen without the county doing an emergency declaration, and we would still see reimbursement on that process. So hopefully we are just talking through it today, and we won't have to go through this at any time during this summer wildfire season, but I want you to be reassured that we've held several events with pretty much every conceivable partner we could find that would respond to a wildfire, and has been a great success. And Johnny Lewis from my staff and training and exercise coordinator behind me has put these together in cooperation with Clackamas Fire District and has put us on a very firm foothold for the beginning of wildfire season.
Fantastic. Questions, colleagues? And I think Gary was first. Sorry, Martha.
Yes, thank you. I want to clarify what Daniel said by saying it in a different way because we have new board members. So if there is a state of emergency, we will attempt to convene the Board of Commissioners as a whole to declare an emergency. But if that is not possible, the county code allows the chair to declare the emergency up front and then have it ratified by the board at the next available opportunity. In our past several declarations, that has been the case. We could not convene the board, so the chair declared the emergency, which in this case, Chair Roberts has the authority to do that, and then the board reaffirms it as soon as they can next meet. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, my question has to do with reimbursement. With what's been happening at the federal level, how secure is reimbursement for disasters of this kind? And do you know what's been happening across the country in other areas in terms of reimbursement from flooding, tornadoes, things of that sort?
Sure. There hasn't been a formal, they're staying within the current system, which means that the state can request reimbursement, disaster declaration, once they've reached a certain threshold in dollar amounts per capita is what it comes down to. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think it's roughly $2 to $3 per capita for the county, and then around $2 per capita for the state. Once a jurisdiction's costs and damages exceed that, they can request that presidential declaration. What we have seen with the current administration is they are issuing less of those and turning them down. We've also heard that they're going to change the structure of that program, increasing that per capita by about 3 or 4 times, and also requesting kind of the equivalent of a deductible or a cost, an additional cost match. They already request a 25% cost match for reimbursement claims, but we've heard that that may go up, as well as the threshold for being able to request that declaration may increase as well. But we haven't seen formal guidance to that yet.
Information on that. Where is that in Congress? Do you know, is that like in the Congression, or is that, and this is a technical question on the politics, or is it the role of the executive branch, just to kind of?
I believe it's still within FEMA, and DHS
FEMA.
is working on that guidance. I can follow up and find those
Okay,
answers
thank
out.
you.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions. One, I was hoping you might be able to talk about the new system that you are able to kind of track who's been notified and if they've left or not. Sounds like that's a new system, as I understand.
Sure, it's using a GIS software. It's an app called Survey 123. It's used for many things, many jurisdictions, but it's relatively simple that a deputy can go fill out the name of the individual they talked to, how many folks may be in that home, whether that, that they've been there, was someone home, was someone not, and whether the status of those folks are, and letting them know that, of course, if we're giving you that notification, we may not be able to come back and further evacuate. But it allows us to track this all. It comes and populates a map in the EOC, so we can track all that. If there's an issue where somebody needs transportation assistance or things like that, it populates it and sends it to our H3S partners that will be staffing our Emergency Support Function 6 desk that would be able to find a resource that would help those individuals.
Fantastic. And then I was just wondering if you could touch on this, just how the communication kind of works with Portland General Electric. When we have high winds and they make the decision to shut that down, or I just want to know how are you guys involved in that conversation, or how's that work out?
Certainly, as soon as they see the fire weather broadcast, depending on whether we get a fire weather warning or right to a red flag, they'll be reaching out to us, letting us know what they're suspecting they're doing. They have a incident management team that they start for their corporate incident management team, and they'll begin communicating us what are their thoughts. Does this look like they're going to do it? And we'll talk and email a couple times a day. They do that, and they begin to consider their public safety shut off. They'll give us as much warning, I think, up to about 96 hours to begin to plan for that. If we have a weather forecast that's far out, otherwise it could become relatively quickly. And then they'll let us know what zones they're considering. We help to do the alerting for them on that. We will help pass through any messages on that. And then if any new zones kind of pop up or shorter notice, they get notified relatively quickly. I know that the executives over there as well have communication direct here into the county administration and to the BCC as well. So we should be hearing through at least 2 to 3 different channels their considerations. And if a wildfire is going on, they're in constant communications with us about areas that may need to be powered off for safety and things like that as well.
Great. And my last question, it's more of a comment, and maybe at another time we could have you come back and talk more about that. But look at some of the fires in California and where we're evacuating people to, and what's just more or less for us to kind of be more educated on what are some of those options and what pre-plans are kind of made for that. It seemed like that was pretty crucial in some of the stuff in California, and so I'd just like to get educated more on it, but maybe another time you can come back and just talk about that. I think that's a whole nother subject.
I'd love to invite our Red Cross and our Oregon Department of Human Services folks who have done a lot of work on that to be able to address that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for all your hard work, and we appreciate what you do, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed and no backyard burning. So let's have a safe summer. So thank you both very much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. And Gary, I'm turning to you again there.
Thank you. Next is 82nd Avenue Transit Project Locally Preferred Alternative Draft Support Letter for your consideration. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development, will present.
Good morning, Chair Roberts and Commissioners. We are here today to look for your authorization to submit a letter of support for the 82nd Avenue Transit Project. Let's just take a second and kind of expand on that a little bit for you. So essentially, this is an effort convened by TriMet and Metro. It started back in 2022 and just recently concluded in January of 2024 with a decision on what they call the locally preferred alternative. And so that is essentially an assessment of transit services, transit stops, and transit improvements, necessary safety improvements, to really do a deeper dive about transit service on 82nd Avenue, extending north and from Portland south to Clackamas Town Center area. In your materials, there is a illustration of the alignment with the stops that are being considered. If you recall, Commissioner Scholl was our representative on this particular task force, or this particular steering committee, pardon me. And then in January of this year, the board appointed Commissioner Savas. It was kind of an awkward position to be in all honesty, because you weren't a part of the process. But at the very end, to be a part of the steering committee and make the final vote on the locally preferred alternative before you today. That alternative was approved unanimously, and essentially we are at a point in time where we are being requested to provide a letter of support regarding that alternative. I want to make a couple things clear. This letter issues support for the locally preferred alternative, does not commit any county funds or change any priorities within the county's plans or projects that we may have. This approval is taking a variety of different forms, everywhere from a resolution of support to a simple letter, and we chose the simple letter that's before you today. That's about all I have. I can do a deeper dive into the assessment. I have Karen Bjerg if you have very specific questions about the project, but I'd be happy to answer your questions you might have at this point in time.
All right. Commissioner Savas has a question.
Well, comments and maybe a suggestion or two. So, number one, thanks, Dan, for your intro. I attended one meeting in January that was, board said, go forth and complete Commissioner Scholl's work, so to speak. And so I just went in, the board chose to support the LPA at the time. I think what's bolded here in the packet is correct. I don't challenge that. But what has changed since January is, number one, is this BAT lanes could. So that's one issue that I think we ought to talk about, and maybe you can explain that. But before I go there, I do have some edits of the letter, and I know my staff person, Everett Weil, was out last week. Emily filled in late, and then because of the timing of getting this in the packet for Thursday, I was not given the opportunity to review the final draft of this letter. So it is a draft. But I just want to point out that though the material from Metro, or with Metro's letterhead on it in the packet, shows the bus stops and everything, I just want to make it just clear that they're actually reducing the bus stops by nearly half. And that's how they really get the speed, in which the 8 to 10 minute improvement in speed is by reducing the stops. So, it's been a concern of some that I've heard of, that some of the people who are not mobile enough to walk that extra distance are going to be compromised a little bit. So I don't know how that'll work out, but that's one issue. But the BAT lanes, I have heard, and I do know, a couple of the property owners on 82nd Avenue, some of which were kind of surprised by, basically the material suggests that they were involved in the BAT lanes, and some of them were just actually learned of this. So could you explain to my colleagues, first of all, what a BAT lane is?
I will try. And so essentially, when looking at transit service along the 82nd corridor, they are having discussions around what they call these business access transit lanes. And so essentially what happens, and Karen, please don't hesitate to come up here if I get this wrong. But essentially, it's how the transit service intermingles with businesses up and down that corridor. Because if you've driven 82nd Avenue recently, you'll see there are sections of 82nd Avenue that have bus-only lanes identified. There are some sections in Clackamas County, short stints. But the discussion is to ensure a more expedited trip up and down the corridor. Is there a discussion around providing additional bus-only transit, which then could affect businesses because it's essentially encroaching into privately owned property? Or is there a discussion about reducing lane numbers on 82nd Avenue, which then has a concern about congestion? Because if you've driven 82nd Avenue at any particular time, there's a lot of capacity or a lot of congestion in those areas. And any reduction in lanes to the north of the Clackamas County would obviously impact Clackamas County as well. So Commissioner Sabas made note, there are two specific concerns that were brought up in the letter that were recommendations that came from him. And the first is on page 1 of the letter. It's where they start. Essentially, there was a concern about displacement of businesses and impacts any certain improvements may have on the businesses and ensuring we minimize those impacts. Second was regarding those bat lanes and specifically diversion caused by any future decision that may cause diversion by a reduction of capacity for cars along that corridor. And those were two specific current concerns that we call out in this particular letter. No final decision has been made on that. There is a discussion underway about how that is being addressed. I can't speak for the process. I cannot speak for the decision makers. I can speak for the fact that having driven 82nd Avenue quite frequently, any reduction of lane widths or lane numbers heading north into Multnomah County would have a pretty drastic impact on the ability to circulate in and around the area, would have impact on businesses, et cetera. So I'm assuming they're taking that all into consideration when making that decision.
Thanks for that explanation. I think the part that I think is confusing is that the name kind of lends one to believe that this is going to help businesses, when in fact it's probably not going to help businesses. And really, it really gives TriMet the priority of that lane, which is once a travel lane. And so that's my concern. Those of you who drive 82nd Avenue, and I do, know that 99 times out of 100, the hours that I go through that's in the morning from 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, or it's 9 o'clock at night. It does taper off later in the evening, but it's bumper to bumper almost all day long. So just imagine one lane being taken away on 82nd Avenue for a moment. And, I'm just concerned about that. I'm concerned that that will create more diversion in neighborhoods. And while I did not have the full opportunity to make some comments or make some edits to this letter, I had a little bit, but the way it turned out, it didn't emphasize it. I do have some changes I'd like to make, but I'd like to hear from my colleagues first. I understand that Metro wants this letter for the JPAC meeting on Thursday morning. I am fine with submitting the support for the LPA as is bolded in the packet, for that particular purpose. But when it comes to the diversion and the safety issues and the climate, as far as the CO2 emission increase when people divert, and the lanes, just the fact that the lanes being reduced will increase emissions from my studies. I'm just concerned it kind of defeats the purpose of both air quality and safety. Even though they cite it, I don't think that they're factoring in it correctly. So I know there's more work to be done, but I want to hear from my colleagues first before I make any edits to the letter.
Commissioner Helm.
Yeah, I was introduced to this through the Chamber of Commerce. There was a presentation done to our public policy team, which I was not entirely opposed to, but there was a lot of questions that weren't answered. Number one, the impact to businesses. And it's weird to do a letter of support not knowing what those numbers are prior to even going into it. So I had a little issue with that. And another thing I'd like to know is when they took Foster Road from 82nd down to 52nd to one lane in each direction, I wonder what the impact was. Some people said it has helped keep traffic moving, and some people have said it destroyed businesses. So I don't know what the impact is when you do take a lane away in each direction. So I have grave concerns about this, and I also have concerns about, saying yes before we have kind of some numbers to go by. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I guess my question is, 82nd has consistently had transit. Maybe this is a question for Paul as well. And that the issue that we're facing is we have transit deserts throughout that area that are not being addressed at all, but yet there seems to be a focus on this area. And as you said, the changes may actually be somewhat detrimental. So the changes that may be happening may not be in the best interest of our business community, nor is it really addressing, Paul, am I right, the transit desert that we're seeing in other areas that we've asked continually to be served, and that just isn't happening. So it seems odd to me that they're concentrating on one corridor without addressing the other transit issues that we're facing. Is that a correct assumption?
Chair, may I reply?
Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
So, yes, this does not help at all as far as any transit deserts, because this area is, actually,
Already
this line is the highest ridership line in the whole region. This is TriMet's highest ridership line
that
period,
makes
and has
sense
been for
yeah,
at least 2 decades, if not 3 or more.
And you said there's a reduction in stops?
And they're going to reduce the stops because that's how they get the speed. They want to, but ironically, if you just think about this a little bit, here you have the highest performing line. It ain't broke, right?
Yeah.
So one would tend, what's the fix? And so, but all that said, there's a lot of needs out there where there's absolutely nothing, and we're doubling down in a corridor that quite nearby is the Green Line.
Yeah.
Right? There's the I-205 freeway, there's, and the Green Line parallels the I-205 freeway. So there is high-capacity transit, but this does nothing to help the areas that are transit deserts. This is a highly served, well-served transit area with multiple stops. They're going to reduce the stops in order to gain speed. The other thing about the displacement, which I need to capitalize on here a little bit, or at least not capitalize, but emphasize, and that is that there's a lot of housing, naturally affordable housing in this region on both sides of the highway. And I have friends who live on both sides of, and I'm really going to talk about the highway, I'm really talking about the Portland side, not the Clackamas side. So contextually, I just wanted to say on the record that, my concerns are for the businesses and the residents in Clackamas, but more so in this case because of the magnitude of it, the numbers, the impacts are going to be higher to Portland. So any kind of spillage or diversion, I don't care where if a kid gets hit in the street because a car's trying to wiggle around a bumper-to-bumper situation on 82nd Avenue, I don't care what county you live in, that's not a good day. That's something we all need to step in. I think that's something important for all of us, that no one gets hurt. But there are a lot of people where as soon as you declare a high-capacity transit corridor, and 82nd Avenue will be, then the way that the zoning and all the other regulatory aspects, it makes it much easier to make zone changes. And really what happens is the property values go up, the rents go up, and people get displaced. And I don't know if they're going to move farther east or what, but I just have concern about that. They'll go south. They'll go north. They'll go anywhere where it's more affordable. So I don't think these things have been, I read the material. I've been, we're going to do this. We have this great program, but, I haven't seen an example where high-capacity transit's been introduced and it's been woefully successful in keeping people housed where they are in an affordable way. They might do some I call it token affordable housing units, but there's more people hurt than there are people that stay in the area. Did I cover, Commissioner Schrader, some of your?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly what it was.
Paul, I had a question for you. I see that there's 35 stops. It appears there's about 10 in Clackamas. I wondered if you could kind of comment, how many stops have they reduced it in Clackamas, or also how many stops have been reduced overall? Do you know by chance?
I think if anyone in the room knows, it's Karen. And she's coming up.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Karen Burek. I'm the Long Range Planning Manager at Clackamas County. So during the locally preferred alternative process, they did go through an inner talking with the community about stop reduction. And the majority of the stops being reduced are up in the Portland neighborhood because many of them were much closer to each other than the current standard that TriMet has. And so within Clackamas County, I think the stop reduction was about 3 in each direction. And then the majority of the other stops that were reduced were up in the Portland section. And again, that's because they were already so close together.
Okay. Any other questions?
So Chair, if I would like to make some, if there's no other questions for staff that are up here, I do have some edits I'd like to make.
Go ahead, Commissioner Savas.
Okay. So, pull up the letter here. Reorient myself. So on the first page, where the paragraph below, where it says in January 2025, recommended just for corridor access to Clackamas County supports 82nd Avenue. So in the paragraph starting with while we support, or actually the one below that, so where it says first we acknowledge that displacement often occurs in parallel with transit investments, and we are concerned that economic displacement will affect the businesses. You know, I would like to change that to say affect businesses and housing or rents. Whatever you all suggest, I don't want to exactly wordsmith it, but I do want to edit the letter that incorporates businesses as well as in the housing issue or the rents. And the following sentence kind of touches on that a little bit more, but I think emphasis, I don't want the emphasis to be read as we only concerned about the businesses, because we are, but it's more so the housing, the displacement of the people in the neighborhood. I can attest to that from watching other high-capacity transit lines being implemented. So, you know, the other one speaks to the BAT lanes. Second, reflecting on the ongoing discussions policy, we have concerns about the reallocation of general purpose lanes to BAT lanes. And then followed by on the second page, specifically, we are concerned about the potential impact on our communities due to diversion. And here's where I want to make another edit. And how it's put in there, I'll just want to verbalize it. I'll let staff, again, wordsmith it. But diversion, I like some language in there that diversion is associated with safety and safety issues and increases CO2 emissions. So I would like to have something to that aspect that talks about not just the diversion and the safety, but as the potential increase for CO2 emissions. Which is one of the pillars that the RTP speaks to and what transit is supposed to be about. And part of the letter where it says in January, well, no, is it, no, wait, I'm sorry, not January. Is my name mentioned in here again? Or is that just in the staff report?
Staff report.
Just the staff report, okay. Yeah, we already talked about that. So those are basically the two areas I wanted to edit. Any staff, you have any questions?
Just one little clarifying question. On the first edit you talked about, so this is the second to last paragraph on the first page, where you wanted us to expand displacements will affect the businesses, and I would prefer to keep it general in nature.
Maybe the word residence is better.
Well, I'm just thinking about keeping it more general about the housing impacts, because there are a number that you talked about, rather than adding the specificity you talked about.
Okay.
So we can add the housing or residential impacts. And I think,
Yeah, and then this one right here.
yeah, that's,
Basically adding in after the word safety and increased CO2 emissions in our communities due to diversion.
and
So-
the safety impacts.
Yeah.
Yep.
So with that said, Dan, I do have maybe in Karen too, just have a question. If you can imagine one, it happens, right? There'll be an accident on a road, 2-lane road, and they'll block one lane, and it's bumper to bumper for miles sometimes, right? How would this impact the spillage? Knowing, I certainly don't want to have the BAT lanes in Clackamas, but still, even if they're in Portland, it's going to probably back up the queue into Clackamas, right? Right? We put a lot of money in urban renewal. We tried to get a lot of business activity, in the area. We made a lot of investments. How do we protect ourselves from the businesses and our investments if the queue is backed up and it just makes Johnson Creek Boulevard, more congested into Happy Valley, all of that? I mean, how are we going to cope with it?
Well, we're going to cope with, one of the things that's clear, it's coming from the discussion that we're having today, is that our Board of County Commissioners has a clear opinion on the reduction of lanes on 82nd Corridor heading north or south, in any direction. And so we're going to be echoing that in our participation in this effort going forward. How are we going to deal with, there's just no way to build enough capacity in any system to deal with something of that nature. In the circumstances that you discussed, those are short-term situations that have lengthy impacts to the local circulation system regarding diversion on local streets, your diversion over to I-205. There's just no way to build a system that has enough redundancy in it to solve that problem, for lack of a better word.
And I think I would also add that currently, where the process is right now is they are involved in moving from 15% design to 30% design. And during that process, we're looking very closely at diversion. And being able to do a deeper dive and working with our partners, including ODOT, to most fully understand what those impacts of a diversion are. So that's currently underway as a part of the design process.
Okay. So do you have enough for those edits?
Yeah,
Okay.
most definitely.
Can you get us a draft by when, do you think, safely for, all respect the time and everything?
An hour.
Okay. Karen, do you know, is this letter actually really needed for the JPAC meeting Thursday? It's not really needed today as much as it is, or what?
It is, Metro has requested, and included in your packet is a letter from the Metro counselors requesting that this letter be available on Thursday, because JPAC will be having an action related to the approval of the locally preferred alternative. So being able to have that letter available on Thursday is very important. Now, the timing before that, the JPAC packet has already gone out. So you would just want to make sure you had it with you, I would say.
Gary, your suggestions on that?
I'm sorry, you have 40 minutes to bring this back before 11:30, and we'll do it at the end of issues today.
Okay.
How's that?
But we are meeting tomorrow too, right?
No, you're not.
Okay. We are meeting later today.
You're meeting all day today, and you're pretty tightly packed, so we could do it at 3:30 today if you want to wait that long.
Okay. Well, I want to make sure we get it right, got a chance to review it, so.
All
It's up
right.
to you, commissioners, when you want to see it.
Well, Dan, if you can do it in 40 minutes, is that doable?
No, that's not, it's a we can do
Yeah,
it in
we
40
can do
minutes.
it.
Yep.
Okay, so let's bring it back
We'll
then.
bring it back.
That's all right. So with that being said, I'll come back to that. And Gary, what is next?
Next, state transportation legislation update. Tonya Holowetsky, Trent Wilson from Public and Government Affairs will give you a verbal update of what's been going on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. So we're here today to provide you an update on the transportation package, House Bill 2025, that was released yesterday. And it's a large bill, 102 pages. And we are working hard right now to understand the various sections. But in the meantime, we do want to provide a high-level overview that reveals that Clackamas County may directly receive over $20 million annually for road uses, number one. Number two, the transit formula funds that go directly to HRS could increase by roughly $1 million. Number 3, Abernathy Bridge has been named for dedicated funding and does not include tolling. And finally, number 4, the I-205 widening project is also named first in line of projects that could receive funds from the Oregon Transportation Commission. There's a lot more to learn. There's a lot of detail. I'm going to stop here and hand it to Trent to see if he wants to add any additional information before we open it up for conversation and discussion.
Thank you very much. Good to see you. Trent Wilson, Government Affairs Manager here at PGA and the county. I thank you for those high-level details. Really, the reason we've waited for a bill is because you're curious about the details. And that's what I tried to share with y'all in a memo that was floating around the Capitol at the end of last week. So you should have that in your email from last Friday if you want to reference that. And I'm referencing that here today as well. So again, just topic level or top level pieces here. Any transportation package happens every 8 years because they are tax increase bills in an effort to fund the transportation system. Usually they're focused on projects. This particular package is focused on operations and maintenance, and that's been the theme of the transportation package this entire year. That was the theme leading up to the year. There are a few projects that are named in the bill, and that is the projects that were not fully funded or completed from House Bill 2017, but the effort by the Joint Committee on Transportation Reinvestment is to make sure that those projects, continue to move forward, but mostly to focus on the operations and maintenance needs and capacities of ODOT. And because we share a formula with ODOT here in the state at the State Highway Fund that the counties and cities are equally invested into, this is what's called the 50-30-20 split, 50% to ODOT, 30% to counties, 20% to cities. And that 30% to counties is shared amongst 36 counties. There's a formula there. Trent doesn't know it, but we get a healthy portion of it because we're a large county. The fuels tax in this current proposal will go up by 15 cents. It's scaled. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens 10 cents in 2026 and then another 5 cents in 2028. I think that's the one the public is notices the most, and sometimes you've asked me, like, how does that translate into, like, per gallon? What does that mean? And I have a 2010 Toyota Prius, it's a 10-gallon tank, so that's the best I can give you right now. This is a 15-cent increase that will add $1.50 every time I fill up 10 gallons. So if you have 20 gallons, it's $3, and so on. That would bring the total gas tax to 55 cents when it's all said and done. So for my Prius, that would be about $5.50 in gas taxes for every 10 gallons. So there's some social math or napkin math, however you want to call it, for comparison. Title fee will increase, the registration fee will increase. There will be a new tax called the road user charge. It'll be specific to electric vehicles, which currently pay no gas taxes, and plug-in hybrid vehicles. The bill is quiet on other hybrid vehicles, ones that are not plug-in. So that's currently the case. Anything can change. There is a new formation of a delivery tax fee. It's similar within the road user charge. So think about those Amazon trucks, not trying to call them out, but they're electric vehicles that are running around, not paying gas tax and using the roads, and they're heavy vehicles. This is a way to create like what's called a geofence and track how many miles they're using to deliver these packages and capture some sort of road recovery cost for within that. Increases to the payroll tax. There's a new tax called the transfer tax. This is transfer of ownership from the dealership to a buyer or an owner to a new owner. And so this will be for cars over $10,000, sales over $10,000. If it's a new vehicle, it'll be 2% of the total sale. If it's a used vehicle, it'll be 1% of the total sale. And that transfer fee is really important to Clackamas County to be aware of, because that is how the state legislature is proposing to pay for what's called the anchor projects. And those are the projects that we've been talking about. Rose Quarter is in there listed, and so is I-205 Abernathy Bridge. And those two projects are the top priority funding for how this fee would be prioritized. $125 million a year bonded until those two projects are paid off. And then there's a suite of a few other additional projects. One of those is Phase 2 of 205, that once those first two projects are paid off, the OTC will have an awareness of how much money they can use to start to pay off the other projects. They could phase it, they could pay them in full. It's up to the Oregon Transportation Commission. But that's how the bill is currently written. And that fee would also currently, according to the bill and according to the framework, We'll fund a couple of other programs called Great Streets and Safe Routes to Schools. So there's other funding mechanisms in there. Transit has been a topic of conversation for this board, and last week the board asked for language within the bill. The bill was being written when the board made that decision last week, so the language that you requested is not in the bill yet. We are working on it, and we have heard from several legislators that they are willing to help us get that language in there. Amendments will come to the bill, so this is not the final bill. We're still working on getting that language included, but for the purposes of the bill being a tax increase bill, this is proposing an increase from what's called 1/10 of 1% of your paycheck, or of each dollar of your paycheck, to go from 1/10 of 1% up to 3/10 of 1%. So it's 0.1 now, and it'll phase up into 3 different phases over multiple bienniums. First, starting in 2026 to 0.18, so an 80% increase, then to 0.25, so an additional 70%, and then all the way up to 0.3 by the third biennium from now. So those are the taxes that are proposed to be increased to fund our very expensive transportation system. I want to highlight what Tonya shared a minute ago, which is I-205 is called out in this bill, which has been a top priority for Clackamas County as a non-tolled option within this project. So within the framework of what the board's agenda has asked for, we look at that as at least an initial win. And then because of the 50-30-20 split and how we have worked really hard to protect that 30% for counties, any money raised into the state highway fund, the county will get a healthy share of that, and that will be Dan and his good department working with you to determine how to prioritize that funding. So that is not Trent's or Tonya's job, that it will get to be y'all's job if this bill passes. And that is the information that we have. Thank you.
All right, lots of questions. Start with you, Commissioner Helm.
Was there, I know it's still in a state of flux, but I know initially there was language, someone had mentioned putting language in about checks and balances with the way ODOT spends money, and was that language added?
Oh yes, it's the first section of the bill. Accountability will be a major theme of this transportation package. They are taking a lot of efforts to do that. One of those accountability measures will be an adjustment from what happened in 2017, where the director of ODOT was appointed by the Oregon Transportation Commission, which is appointed by the governor. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint who that person fully reports to. It's been the OTC. One caveat in here is to move that director back under the purview of the governor. And so that is one top, kind of a top level down component, but there's also the formation of a continuous improvement advisory committee that will focus directly on almost like an annual or every other year, looking at the major projects in particular. There's the formation of a major projects group and efforts to bring in expertise into ODOT to help with major projects as mega projects become more expensive. ODOT has said that the Abernathy Bridge is the biggest project that they've had in history. When you look at the I-5 bridge, it's not even comparable in size. It's like they have big projects coming down the pike that Oregon has to begin addressing. They're going to need the expertise to do that, and the legislature wants to help them have that. And that was the finding of an audit that a group came in to do, and said, really where there needs to be some help is on the major projects component. Some of the pieces in that audit also deal with scope, well, for lack of a better phrase, scope changes within projects that ODOT is in charge of. Because when it comes to the local level, ODOT begins to work with local jurisdictions, and there's been a history of making adjustments to that project to meet local needs as well. So there is some language in there that will tighten how much of that scoping is allowed, because the audit found that scope adjustment is really where there's a lot of opportunity to limit how much these projects are increasing. And so there's some legislators who want to see more skin in the game by local governments when those scope changes happen. That's a big component of what's in Section 1 as well.
So my question is, if I may, what's the likelihood of this passing? Any read on that?
High-ish. It's very late, so I don't want to say that it's 100%. And it's very late, it's a big bill, and there's a lot of consternation because this is a 102-page bill with tax increases, and honestly, not every legislator has been in the room to create it, and I would say a handful, maybe a little bit more than that, have been in the room to create it. And so a lot of legislators are seeing this bill at the same time you are, and the same time we are. And so there is some consternation about that. I don't want to downplay that. And as a result, I think there's a lot of confusion. Does this have time to mature and get the votes and so on? So I wouldn't say it's a perfect 100%. At the same time, there are a lot of there are a lot of things in this bill that many legislators have been trying to gain and articulate. But I would say currently, the posture of one partisan group within the building, the Republicans, are not really happy with the bill as it currently stands. Some might be, but it is, first bill, a little bit of angst. But there is a commitment right now by legislative leadership to get this bill across the finish line. There is a glaring hole in ODOT's budget that's over $300 million that if this does not pass, that will start to come out of the state's general fund, which will start to come out of services to Health, Housing, Human Services, or the federal or fire responses or education programs. So there is motivation for the legislature to pass a bill. And if it does not pass this session, it would probably pass maybe in the short session. So I don't think a transportation package will pass in the near term, whether it's in the next 20 days or in the next 12-ish months. But something will pass soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trent. Commissioner Salvis has a question.
Yeah, just some comments. I appreciate this informational presentation. I just want to say that there's some, I was hoping for more clarity by now, no reflection on anyone in this room, of course, but, and Trent, thanks for your explanation. I was trying to get, knowing our two board goals, transportation-oriented is 205, and Sunrise, in this case, we're talking about 205. And, my hope was there be better clarity as to specifically how the 205 lanes are paid for, right? And knowing that the governor paused tolling until 26, and knowing that there's no committed funding mechanism as I'm reading it and as I heard you explain it, but to hear, and again, I know this is not you, but you're just repeating what's in the bill. But it gives me pause to think that we got to wait for, first of all, for the Rose Quarter and the Abernathy Bridge to be completed. That'll take years, right? And then wait for them to be paid off, which is probably going to be 30 to 35 years, right? And it seems to me that, and I do see, and my colleagues don't know this, but unless they read the bill, but it looks like those other projects are maybe prioritized where 205 lanes is more towards the top, which is good news, right? But I don't see, unless there's a commitment to say in the bill, there's language to say the lanes will be paid for with these specific funds or funding mechanism, do I have the, comfort to know that it won't come back in the form of tolling?
Thank you for, I don't know if that was a question, but I have a response to it. And I'm going to do my best here. My understanding is that those other projects are not waiting 30 years for those to be paid off. My understanding is $125 million is being set aside every year for these capital projects. And the priority is for those top two. And so it's my understanding that that there will be an initial and quick effort, and the legislature has said more math needed, to be fair. But to understand what that number is. And what we've been told is that when they were talking in bienniums a month or two ago, that 125 a year is 250 biennium. So they were talking in 250 scales. That the Rose Quarter plus Abernathy Bridge would be about 205-ish of that $250 million. So in theory, there's $45 million or so of biennium that can be dedicated for these other projects nearish immediately as soon as these funding programs come online over the next couple of years for the OTC to have discretion on how that is funded. That's the best I can offer here with the details that are given in the bill. And so I don't think it's that those projects have to wait. I just think it's a determination on how much will those projects, what is the determination of the cost for these major projects, knowing that the major projects division is about to get formed up based on the accountability question, and then how much is remaining, and how does the OTC want to prioritize that? Do they want to try to fund only the lanes, or only, do they want to phase two, so that they go through Westland first where there are no bridges and then go past that? That's a OTC, ODOT conversation. But I agree with you, it would be nice to have more clarity or certainty in that, absolutely. But I don't want to leave here with without having said, like, the project is prioritized in the bill. So it gives it a chance to move forward, and it will require more advocacy by us. I don't want to shortchange that either, but there's money there for it.
Yep. But, my point, that's reasonable. I don't disagree. But I will say the $45 million remainder isn't enough to build any, well, at least that project, right? So it's woefully short. And, maybe it could be, my concern is maybe it would be augmented by something like tolling or congestion pricing or something like that. That's my concern, and that we've gone through enough studies and exercise and analysis to know that that section is not a safe, reasonable, practical, pragmatic means of paying for it. So it would do more harm than good, and so that's my concern. But the other thing I just wanted to let my colleagues know and be on the record is you mentioned their $300 million hole that ODOT is in, and I think we're all kind of really wondering what the real numbers are. We don't really know, to Commissioner Helm's question or comments about accountability. I think we're all kind of waiting to see what that materializes out. But I sit here today still uncertain of what the challenges. I know that I recognize there's a funding challenge. I know that there's more monies needed for road maintenance, and that's been something that they've been delaying, and they have invested in 2017 in capital, but not maintenance. All that said, I also have seen some projections that don't make any sense to me. For example, one of the charts I saw showed that they're basing their financial future on a assumption that gas sales will go this way, gasoline sales. So if the gasoline sales do fall at a decline that looks like this, then certainly you can argue that they'll need more money. But it hasn't been explained why that decline is going to happen in 3 years, right? And I did ask ODOT staff, never got a clear explanation, and I was promised they would get back to me, but it never did happen. So if you level that back out and you actually, let's assume it's flat, the economic crisis they're in looks different. So I don't know. I still sit here today just not knowing exactly what the math is and the financial understanding. That hasn't really been, again, I'm not complaining, but I would just want to be on record saying I know we all need more funding because costs of building and maintaining roads and everything has gone up. I just don't know to what degree. And it sounds like there's a lot of prescription into how the revenue will be generated, but less prescription as to how forecasting and accountability will be implemented to make sure that we're getting the dollars put where we were. It's a shame they spent over $240 million on the tolling exercise. That's money burned and lost. But I guess I'll just stop there on that and say that, I appreciate the information today, and I don't know that we'll get clarity. I'll be watching the hearings. I'm going to try to attend tomorrow night to testify on the transit piece. It sounds like we will get priority only once, and that'll be one meeting out of 3, get priority, and then we got to wait in line afterwards. So I'm going to use that. I plan on, if with you're okay, plan to use that priority for tomorrow night versus tonight.
Thank you. I don't know if we got to speak to that, but there are 3 hearings this week about the transportation package. Tonight is about accountability and anchor projects, and so 205 would be tonight. Tomorrow night is transit specific, and that's what Commissioner Savas is talking about. And then Thursday night is about operations and maintenance, or the 50-30-20 formula. And so it's unfortunate that they're spreading it out that way, and I guess when you testify, you don't have to narrow it in, but probably keep it thematic if however you want to approach it, and whatever the board, how they choose to approach it is your choice.
Right. I had one quick question for you, and I just see on here it says the fuel tax indexing adjust with inflation. So is that something new, or is that how it's currently working with the fuel tax that's out there?
It's It's currently new. This is a new idea, new proposal. And so, as I mentioned, every 8 years or so, the gas tax rate is static. It's static for the federal government, which has stayed at 19 cents a gallon since like 1992 or 3 or something like that. A long time. Hasn't changed at all. And so the state legislature and states across the nation have to take these momentary opportunities to increase it. Some states have started to index at the rate of inflation, which is probably the easiest vernacular to phrase this. So that would be new, and it happens after, my understanding from a conversation last night where the legislative fiscal office and bill writers were trying to describe this, that these initial increases happen first, 10 cents, and then 5 cents. And then after that, the OTC works with the state economist and others to begin an indexing calculation. It's capped, no more than 3% of super complicated math that Trent should not be the one explaining. But what I've heard through social math, napkin math, is that it's probably like roughly 1 cent, biennium or so. Don't quote me on that. Just trying to give you a comparison of what I'm hearing so that you can hear something similar. But it puts the state and counties and cities in a spot where they're not dependent on the gas tax, going, does it go down, does it go up, does the state legislature have to take a hard vote every few years? There's an opportunity for this, one of the legs of the funding stool for transportation, to keep up with the cost of things because, inflation was real during the pandemic where steel and concrete went way high, but gas tax stayed the same.
And one last comment, that we're having our meeting this Thursday, and a great chance, it's in the evening on Thursday, correct, Gary?
When is the Transportation Committee taking testimony? Is it this Thursday as well?
They're taking testimony tonight, tomorrow, and Thursday.
3 nights. Yep.
3 nights. And then we have our public
Business meeting is this Thursday night.
this Thursday. So we just encourage the public to pay attention, and we're always listening to their thoughts and inputs about this change, and encourage them to let us know their thoughts. So with that being said, I appreciate all your hard work, that you guys have been working many hours on this, so I appreciate it. And if there's no other questions, I'll turn it back over to Gary for what's next.
Thank you. Next, Lake Forest Neighborhood Association proposed bylaws. Tanya will present. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Commissioners, I'm here to ask for your approval of the proposed Lake Forest Neighborhood Association bylaws. Lake Forest Neighborhood Association has recently reactivated as the recognized community planning organization in unincorporated Lake Oswego. And this CPO has been inactive for many, many years. Community members, I think the last time there was any sort of activities was in 2015 when they, the community reactivated started the process to reactivate the community planning organization within the city boundaries. So this has been for quite some time. Anyway, the county community members have followed the county's process for restarting a CPO in the unincorporated area of Lake Oswego and submitted the attached new bylaws for review and approval. They have gone through council review and there have been no changes made. So I'm asking you to approve the bylaws for Lake Forest Neighborhood Association.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion?
Chair, I move, go ahead, Martha.
Wasn't quick enough. Is this the area, I know that they have come to us, to the county, about a tree ordinance because they've had issues. I think this is the area that's done that, where they've seen the county come in and cut like a line of trees. And because we don't have a tree ordinance, that became an issue. And I believe this is also the group that lobbied Lake Oswego to become involved in that. So do you know, is that an issue
I
that you're
don't know off the
expecting
top of my head, but I'm certainly going to look into
come
that
up with
for you.
this? Because at this point in time, we have not, as a board, attempted to do tree ordinances in unincorporated areas because of the ramifications for all the unincorporated, including our rural kind of timber areas, what that might look like. So I'm fine moving ahead with this, but I think we may hear from our folks out there about potential for tree ordinance protection because they're disturbed about trees being taken down. But just
All right, thank you. I think Commissioner Savas was maybe ready to make a motion, is that right?
Yeah, I move to approve the bylaws and the revitalization of the Lake Forest. Is that what it is? Got to pull on my top of my packet here again.
Lake Forest Neighborhood
Yeah,
Association.
Lake Forest Neighborhood Association bylaws.
I'll second that.
Right. Commissioner Savas has moved to approve the proposed bylaws for the Lake Forest Neighborhood Association. It's been seconded by Commissioner Schrader. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Helm,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And Gary, what is next?
Next, Extension Service Task Force Representative, the Oregon State University Extension Service has reached out to me inviting one of you commissioners to serve on a task force that they are creating between Oregon State University, Clackamas County, and Clackamas Community College to discuss the new facility for the Extension Service at the Clackamas Community College campus. It is only for that purpose. And I'm asking you today, which one of you would like to serve on this task force and would be open to your feedback and seeking a direction today, please?
Colleagues, I would very much like to be on this task force because of my close association with OSU Extension. I serve on the NRAC board, which is their research station board. I've also very aware of the programs they offer, in particular the Master Melitologist program, as well as the Master Naturalist program, other extension issues, and have spent many years in Canby watching youngsters do 4-H out in that rural area and my connection with FFA in that capacity. So I'm hopeful that you would allow me to be that liaison.
Oh, very
I'm
nice.
good with that. I'm good with that.
Thank you.
Right.
Motion, please.
Yes.
I move to appoint Commissioner Schrader to the Extension Service Task Force.
I second that.
Right.
Colleagues.
So Commissioner Savas has moved to nominate Commissioner Schrader to serve on the Extension Task Force, seconded by Commissioner Helm. Any further discussion? I would just like to say thank you for volunteering.
Yes, thank you.
Quite the
It
discussion.
is,
So,
yeah, it's very important work, though, so thank you.
good one.
So no other discussion. Clerk, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Helm,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And Gary?
Thank you. Next, Advisory Board and Commission appointments. Andrew, go ahead, please.
The Community Health Council, staffed by the Health, Housing, and Human Services Department, has one vacancy. Current council members voted unanimously to recommend Rebecca Martin to serve a first term on the council. The recommendation is as follows. Rebecca Martin to a first term ending in 2027. The Board of County Commissioners could select other candidates or require further recruitment, Mr. Chair.
All right. Questions, colleagues? Get around, seeing none. May I have a motion?
I move we approve the appointment of Rebecca Martin to the Community Health Council.
Second.
All right. Commissioner Helm has moved to approve the appointment of Rebecca Martin to the Community Health Council. Commissioner Schrader, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Helm,
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Gary?
Next, review of your board business meeting agenda for this Thursday, June 12th, 2025 at 6 p.m. This is an evening business meeting, 6 p.m. You will have two public hearings. One is on removing from the county code several personnel policies. You already authorized this at a policy session. This is a formal first hearing. And a second hearing on an annexation for sanitary sewer from Wes. You will have a lengthy consent agenda on county items as well as the Housing Authority and Water Environment Services. Again, my request is if you have a question on a consent agenda, it's fine to ask the question, but tell me in advance so I can have staff in the room to answer your question. That is my request for you, please. If you have any questions, though, prior, ask me as well, and I'm happy to answer it for you before the meeting. Thank you. Last item, well, the next to last item is Commissioner Communications. We're still going to loop back to the 82nd Avenue letter, and you have a policy session at 11:30. Thank you.
All right. I was trying to see if we were ready, but for communication, I'll go ahead and transfer to that, to Commissioner Schrader. Comments?
Yeah, let me just say a few things here. Following the board retreat with the Association of Oregon Counties yesterday, I attended the Board of Directors meeting where I gave the National Association of Counties legislative update of what we've been doing at that county. And basically, colleagues, if you really want to get a good look at what they've been doing, check out their website. It has all additional information of the work they're doing right now, particularly during this administration, and they actually have a week-by-week analysis of what has been happening, in particular, what's been happening with the president's executive orders. So if you want the details on that, I would suggest we do that. Again, I also attended, it was both the legislative committee and the board meeting, and I reported after the retreat that we are in sound financial condition, and I'm very happy about that. And I'm happy that we're going in the direction we're getting ready at this point in time. Remember, November, we're going to be having our meeting. It's a ways away, down usually in Eugene, where we have that, so I'm hopeful that we'll all encourage one another to go. I reiterated that I am now in the process of putting my name in the hat for the National Association's second vice president slot. So thanks to Gina, I've been getting numbers of the directors of all the national associations across the country, which I will be calling and finding out what their issues are. I think this is important for our county, assuming that I can potentially be successful in this. This is probably only the third time in my memory that we've had someone step up to the plate with this. The first president I recall was Randy Franke. It was a number of years ago. The other person who stepped up was Bill Hansel, who moved on to become from a commissioner to National Association president to now a retired state senator as well. And I'm looking forward to attempting to follow in their footsteps. So I'm going to ask for your help next July, when basically that campaign will be in full swing. And I want to thank Public and Government Relations for seeing that as something that will be important not only for our county to basically have more of potentially more stature at the national level as we work with our national partners, but also at the state level, and giving us some oomph. And in terms of really helping to mold federal policy that affects us. And that is a real role that we do in this county. I like to remind people that when we do go to National Association meetings, it is largely because a large amount of our dollars, particularly for our social service delivery systems, come from the federal government, and it's under our purview to negotiate and to remind our national legislators that we are the boots on the ground that provide those services. So I think that's one of the reasons why these activities are so important. Thank you for allowing me to work with Extension, and so I do have a couple announcements about them. Let's see, the 10th of this month, the Northwest Valley Experiment Station will have its Strawberry Open Field Tour. I'm going to try and go to that. We'll see what happens with my time, but this is strawberry season. And I remember many years ago when I ran those fields, and was actively farming, and it's a large job to grow strawberries and get them picked on time and get them to market and get them to the canneries. And then on the 11th, NREC, our anchor for research up here, ag research in this area of the state, is also going to be having its agricultural technical field day, and both of those are in the afternoon. And also, I'm continuing to meet with school districts talking about the county curriculum that I've been developing that will hopefully help us feed some of our local youth into the new program that the women of NACO are pulling together, and it is the Women of NACO's Youth Initiative. So I'm hopeful that with the curriculum that I can present to the women of NACO, as well as what I'm working with the school districts here, that we can get some local recruits here from our youth to actually go to that. They're planning to have folks go to that conference. These are young leaders in our counties across the country, and hopefully we can be part of that and get some of our young leaders here to go to. It will be a trip to DC. It'll be shadowing local commissioners, and it will be actually visiting some of the hot spots like the White House and things of that sort. So still working on that, and glad to be here to do so. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I just wanted to kind of update you a little bit on some of the transit stuff that's going on. We talked a little bit about the 82nd Avenue piece. Thanks for approving the language and the effort last Thursday to, and as Trent conveyed, we have been talking to some legislators about that language. I have been, a lot of people have been reaching out and asking me more about this. There's a lot of people that don't realize the challenges that we have and the built environment, if you want to call it that. I did have a meeting with one of the Washington County, or lunch yesterday with one of the Washington County commissioners, and his list was almost all transit-related questions. So they too have some challenges in Washington County, perhaps not as, from a population standpoint, as great as ours, but they do have a significant concerns as well. So just want to let you know there's a lot of interest in that. I have, unfortunately, I've been trying to stay in touch with a number of folks at TriMet, but it's kind of gone quiet here the last few days, so I have not heard very much, maybe perhaps even a little longer. I was hoping to get I'm carrying about 3 different issues and talking to a few different people, and I have not heard much. So I just want to let you know that communication with TriMet is seeming to be difficult. And Commissioner Schrader, you and I are meeting this afternoon, and another transit issue with the senior center that we'll be talking about. So it's been about a month now since I've been trying to work solution through this, and it's been crickets on at least one of those. So I'm kind of concerned.
We need to fix that.
Yep. But that's really all I have for today. Chair, yield back to you.
Thank you. Commissioner Helm.
Nothing yet. Still learning.
All right. So Gary, I think we'll transition back to the 82nd Avenue Transit Project.
Yes, so I'm going to ask Andrew. We have a paper copy, and he'll show it on the screen here in a moment. The 2 sections that are updated are highlighted in yellow for your consideration. So we'll give you a moment to read that. And then Andrew will post it online. On the screen, I mean.
Right. So if we're, give you another moment.
Yep. Well, I think
We're
staff
good with
did a good job capturing that, so thank you.
So if it looks pretty good, may I have a motion?
I move we approved the letter to President Peterson and Metro Council.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. All right, so Commissioner Schrader has moved to approve the letter of support. Commissioner Savas has seconded that. Any further discussion?
Just want to kind of ask my colleagues if they have any in this role. I know we'll be having our retreat in a couple of weeks, and maybe this assignment can be passed off ongoing to another one of my colleagues. I don't know if there's anyone interested, but I just want to let you know I am been overwhelmed on the transportation side, and the timing of these meetings, unless they change the timing of the meetings, it has been a little bit challenging for my schedule. But are there any thoughts, any other thoughts you have about this letter?
Commissioner Helm.
Well, I just want to express my concern, which I did earlier, but one of the things that as I delve into this, and there's a lot of reading to do, there's a lot of research on my part that I still need to do. I will be voting no on this, and I'm not comfortable with it yet, and I may change my mind later. But there is a disconnect between TriMet and Clackamas County, and I really am concerned about the disparity of dollars that come our way and how much we put in for TriMet and how little comes back to us as a county. So it's another reason why I kind of don't support this. So just kind of I'm here to support Paul. This was one of my priorities when I applied for this position. So it's one thing I hear locally is everyone wants our roads fixed. So this is should be a priority for all of us. But I want to support Paul as much as possible, be another voice, advocate for our county and our citizens. And I just have concerns about this. So I will be voting no.
Yeah. Chair Roberts, I want to, you and I have had discussions about this, and as you know, and I don't think Commissioner Helm has heard that much from me about this, but I just want to build on, it's been very difficult to represent you all, the board, right? And it's been, and this dates back even last year, whether it's aspects of a potential transportation framework, or it's elements of this, or it's transit and so on. So, I have reservations, frankly, about just call it the built environment of politics around transit and TriMet and Metro. We had a great meeting on Thursday morning with our Metro reps, and we talked about transit. So I feel as though we were heard from Metro about this, and maybe we have similar thoughts about concerns about the areas where we're not maybe getting our fair share, and we seem to be more focused on capital projects as opposed to just basic elementary service that people pay for and expect. And that's what this is. It's a capital project more, I think, than it is than really serving transit. I don't think the ridership can get any better, that much better, on the best serving, highest capacity line in the whole region, probably the whole state. So, Chair, I just want to know if you support this letter as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, first of all, big thanks to you for getting me up to speed on some of the financial concerns that you've had, that what Clackamas County gets. And I think that I'm probably in the same boat as my colleague right here as far as getting up to speed and making sure that I'm really kind of aware. I appreciate the time you've taken. I did almost see my colleague here raise her hand to help step up to help Paul on this.
Oh, I need to see that schedule.
So,
That would be a great combination.
yeah, so I think I think this is a good step, so I appreciate all the staff that worked on this, and so I think we're probably ready to take a poll then. Are you, any other comments, Paul?
No, but just want to make sure you're all comfortable. I understand Commissioner Helms stated her where she's at, so I appreciate that.
We're fine with it. This
All
is
right.
never-ending
Clerk, would
battle.
you go ahead and take the poll for us then?
Commissioner Helm,
No.
Commissioner Savis,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-1, Mr. Chair.
Right, thank you. And with that, I'll go ahead and conclude our administrator issues and updates for today. And Gary, are we going to continue now or take a break?
Going to continue.
All right, so we'll move to our policy session of the day. Gary, would you introduce the first topic?
Thank you. Your first and only morning policy session is 2025 Clackamas County Resident Community Survey results. The Public and Government Affairs team will present. Tony Holowetsky, Director, and Mike Riley from Riley Research Associates will also present. Go ahead, please.
There's a person from my past. Morning. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Okay, all right, well, This is a topic near and dear to PGA, so I'm glad that we're able to be here today to present to you. Commissioners, Tonya Holoweski, Director of Public and Government Affairs, and with me today is Mike Riley, who's the principal of Riley Research and Associates. Every 2 years, PGA contracts with an outside market research firm to conduct a scientific survey of county residents, measuring issues of concern, awareness of access to county government services, media sources, trustworthiness, and a whole lot more. We use this information to track trends over time, helping shape our communication strategies, and also to inform the BCC. And with your upcoming BCC retreat, we thought this information would be really timely and important for you to have. The data helps us, PGA, improve our communication and awareness regarding county services and programs, as well as to highlight some of the county successes. The community perceptions are about their most pressing issues that they believe are facing the county. We probe how residents consume information, where they get their information from, and we also want to understand their perceptions of the reliability and the trustworthiness of county information. So that's what we look for in these data, and I'm going to hand it off to Mike, who will walk you through highlights of the data, and then we'll open it up for any questions or additional information you may want.
Thank you, Tonya. Yeah, I'm Mike Riley with Riley Research Associates, about a 35-year-old market research company based here in the Portland area, Washington County, unfortunately. But I'm glad to be here today to talk about the survey. It was a survey, was a representative scientific telephone survey among 400 Clackamas County residents selected at random. A sample of 400 produces information considered accurate to within plus or minus 5% at a 95% level of confidence. It's a benchmark survey, meaning that the results were, the questionnaire is very similar to one conducted in 2023, and so we were able to compare year-over-year results to some of the key questions. The first question, if you could scroll to the first chart, please. It was a top-of-mind, unaided question about what's important to you as a resident of Clackamas County. And we learned that financial issues remain among Clackamas County residents' biggest concerns. However, homelessness and poverty as a category was also mentioned by just 23%, which was down some from 32% in 2023. Concern remains in terms of problems associated with jobs, the economy, and inflation, mentioned by 20%, which is virtually unchanged from 2023. In addition, the lack of affordable housing, it edged up to 12% from 10% 2 years ago. Crime, which is often associated with homelessness, was the next most frequent response at 8%, but crime was also down significantly from 20% in 2023. The next biggest issues were traffic and concern for the environment, which were tied at 7%, just up slightly from 2023. Now, in the next chart, we looked at our second question, which was a list of the issues read to the respondents. So after we read through the list, we wanted them to listen to all of the issues and then tell us which of those were their top concern. Many of them were the same issues, and as you might expect, many of the residents did stick with their initial response, indicating that concern for homelessness and poverty remained the top response at about the level of 24%, which is about the same as 2023. Actually, it was at about the same as the initial unaided response, but down from 36% in 2023. But cost of living and specifically inflation had the second most mentions at 22%, followed by jobs and the economy at 13%. So financial issues were top of mind. Crime and lack of affordable housing were tied for fourth at about 8%, but crime was down from 20% in 2023 on this aided question as well. And housing was down from 12% to just 8% this year as a concern. Traffic was at 7%, as was concern for the environment, up somewhat from 2023, I think in part due to the wildfires from last year. On the third slide, the third chart, we considered the residents' first and second most important issues. We felt, okay, what's important to you? What's the next most important issue to you? As kind of a better measure of the overall concerns of the residents. And what we found there was that the Overwhelmingly, the residents cited cost of living and inflation at 43%, combined first and second responses. And then with homelessness and poverty as a close second issue at 37%. Jobs in the economy was third at 23%, followed by housing at 19%, and then crime at 17%. So overall, every way we ask the question, the economy, issues surrounding affordability and inflation and those kinds of things were top of mind, followed by homelessness, those kinds of issues, followed by housing and crime. And then our next issue, the next chart, please. As in the past, we wanted to know if constituents were aware of opportunities to be involved in county government. And what we found was a similar response to past issues, with a slight increase of more than 2/3 saying that they were very or somewhat aware of opportunities to be involved, 69%, up from 67% 2 years ago. Well, about 1/3 remain largely unaware of opportunities to participate. Our demographic analysis, we of course did a set of crosstabs to look at how different people of different age, gender, other characteristics responded to the questions. Our demographic analysis revealed that those with more education tended to have higher awareness, while renters, lower income households, Hispanics, non-English speakers, and immigrants tended to have the least awareness of the opportunities to be involved. The next issue was communications. In terms of what residents consider their single most important source of information about the county, television news remains especially important to some residents, including 38% of seniors. Social media is especially important to younger residents. And while the county's information, those sources are of greatest importance to those with more education, and interestingly, those with a disability. We probed extensively this year to find out what, if any, additional sources of information they might rely on. And we learned that after probing, we probed what about radio? What about county sources? What about television? What about other sources? And through that probing, we discovered that overall television, the most important source of information with all these things considered, was information from the county, mentioned by 55% of residents. Television was second at 49%, followed by social media at 29%, of which Facebook was more than 2/3. Print news media also remains a factor, mentioned by 28%, followed by online news, in other words, information they seek out on the computer.
Mike, can I just have you
Sure.
pause? Could we go up one, please, to the next slide? There we go. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I mentioned online news, followed by internet search engines at 13%, and radio down at 7%, with all probes, all sources considered. And then on the next slide are the results asking questions to tell us about their first preference for information. Where would you turn first if you, or where would you like to get information about the county? And we were pleased to see that the largest percent told us that Clackamas County was the most preferred source of information about the county, something you don't always hear, so that's good to hear, I think. Social media outpaced television as the most preferred source, second most preferred at 21%, followed then by TV, online search engines, print media, and online news. And then our final benchmark question was, we asked how trustworthy they considered information from the county to be. And we asked, is it very trustworthy, somewhat trustworthy, not very trustworthy, or not trustworthy at all? And what we found was, while there was a slight decline in the percentage of those who said they found the information to be very trustworthy at 23%, down from 30% 2 years ago, there was a corresponding uptick in the percentage who said somewhat trustworthy at 58%, up from 54% 2 years ago. And then on the more positive side, only 2% of the residents we surveyed think information from the county is less than trustworthy, which is down from 6% 2 years ago. So statistically, 2% is outside the margin of error. It's virtually nothing, and I think the county's to be commended for that. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you had about any of the data or crosstabs.
Commissioner Salas.
Yeah, could you slide back to the one, just scroll up, keep going. There's one I had a question about. Keep going. Keep going. Yeah, so just a question, maybe it doesn't mean anything at all, but on this one slide here, they're not alphabetical. So the one bar there that says wildfires emergency management, knowing that that is, why is that where it's at in the listing of all those? Would it be, it looks like there's some preference towards the most responses and so on, or percentages, but in that case, that one is an outlier.
It's out of place. It's supposed to be in declining values.
Okay. I guess the same one goes for lack of affordable housing to some degree as well, but I was just curious.
Yeah, it
Not
should
a
have
big
been,
deal.
it was intended to be in declining order, and I missed that one. Apologize for that. But yeah, it should be down below traffic.
And can you go up one more slide or two? Back up towards it. So that one on traffic, if you look at that one on traffic, I know that's a big deal for a lot of people. There's nothing on here that surprises me. But that looks like, what, almost a fourfold increase, just about, right? Do you have the exact number on that, percentage-wise?
Yeah. The exact number for traffic was at 7%. Yeah, it was at 7%, as was concern for the environment.
Yeah, this will be helpful for our retreat.
Yeah, 7% up from what looks like about 3% in 2023.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? I just want to say thank you very much. The information, I really value polling like this to see where the public's at. This is tremendous and a good reflection on a lot of the good work you're doing and building that trust with the community. So just a big thank you. And it's perfect timing, as Commissioner Savas said, as we take a look at it on our retreat and focus on some of the things that are priorities. So thank you both very much.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to add that I think Clackamas County is one of the favorite places that I poll. I tend to get a higher level of response. People are more willing in Clackamas County than some of the other places that I work to respond and to weigh in. So I'm pleased to report that as well.
Yeah, and I'd like to add that one of the things we've implemented since the last survey is that on the off year, so we do the survey every 2 years, on the subsequent year, we take these data and we dig a little bit deeper into some qualitative data doing focus groups. So what we're going to do this year, in the next fiscal year, is going to look at some of these data points and probe deeper to get some more qualitative information from residents based on these data points.
Great, thank you.
So
It
that's
looks
an-
like Commissioner Savas has another question.
It is one thing that came to mind here, and that is there any regional, on the transportation question, is there any regional studies that you're aware of that are relatively recent that get to whether it's traffic or congestion or lack of transit or happy with, with transit or happy with our system or transportation system? I guess what I'm, tomorrow, next day, the Joint Committee on Transportation is going to take in hearings, and I know that, for example, that TriMet's going to bus a lot of advocates up to Salem so they can testify, in support to try and get more money and so on. And I certainly hear in areas that are really, really well served that people are really happy, and people that are unserved are less happy, obviously, right? But I'm just wondering what that looks like county to county. Right.
County to county, I can't speak to that specifically, but I do recall from previous work that we've done for you that people out in the kind of the rural areas are more concerned about safety issues, fog lines on the sides of the roads, adequate room to get around bicyclists and other things like that. Whereas people in the more congested areas are more concerned about the time it takes to get from here to there. I remember some squawking in one of the surveys about too many traffic stops. The traffic stops are unnecessary and slow down traffic. So I can go back and look at some of the work we've done previously and see if there are any hints that I could share with you.
Yep.
And also, Commissioner Savas, this is a point in where, again, when we organize the focus groups, we may want to ask more questions about traffic concerns or issues that are coming up. So we can't, it's not going to help for this week, but I think this is one of the ways that we can also collect more input from our residents.
Yeah, there's a huge, major glaring disparity in alternative modes of transportation around the region. And Clackamas County has the highest population of people that are unserved as far as other modes, transit, essentially for the most part. I would love to have a study point that out to see where Washington County is and where Multnomah County is. And the odd part about it is we keep on making more investments in areas that have really good service and no investment in areas that need it the most. So it's, as I always said, bass backwards.
All right. Anything else, Commissioner? All right. We will now adjourn. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. We'll return at 1:30 for our afternoon policy session. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, to this afternoon's session, June 10th, 2025. County Administrator Gary Schmidt, would you please call the roll for us?
Yes, Commissioner West is out of the office. Commissioner Schrader will be here shortly. Roll call, Commissioner Savas. Commissioner Savas, roll call. Commissioner Savas.
Present.
Commissioner Helm.
Here.
Chair Roberts.
Here.
Commissioner Schrader is here.
Eagle has landed.
All right, Gary, what's up?
Our first session of the afternoon is annual review of fees for solid waste collection services and transfer station. Staff from Transportation and Development will present. Dan Johnson, the Director, Cheryl Bell, Assistant Director. Go ahead, please.
In the interest of time, I'm going to do just a brief introduction and hand it over to Cheryl to give a more detailed assessment. But congratulations, all of you. You get the ability to set waste rates within Clackamas County. This is a process that we look at every year. We are here to share a recommendation from one of our beloved advisory committees regarding adjustments to those rates going forward for the next fiscal year. So with that, I'll turn it over to Cheryl to run through more of the details about the proposal for you today.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Roberts and Commissioners. So as Dan said, we're here to talk about the annual waste review. And before we jump into that, usually some background's helpful because we only do this once a year. So DTD's Sustainability and Solid Waste Program is responsible for managing the county's solid waste collection system. This includes oversight of the transfer station located in Sandy and an annual review of the production records of the 7 companies holding board-approved franchises. Through the franchise program, collectors offer services to the residents within unincorporated Clackamas County and the cities of Happy Valley and Barlow. But having collection services isn't required. Customers can choose to self-haul their materials. The annual review is conducted with the assistance of a contracted CPA, with the results of the review used to establish the fees charged for the variety of services the county requires our franchise collectors to offer and to ensure a fair rate of return for our collectors. The annual review is an important part of our franchise management process, as keeping costs and fees aligned through smaller increases over time helps maintain the stability in the system and avoids large, impactful cost increases in the future. So during the annual review, franchisees submit detailed reports, which are reviewed by staff and the contracted CPA. The review includes an assessment of appropriate operating margins. The county's practice, which is consistent with other communities in Oregon, is to target a 10% operating margin for franchise owners, an acceptable range of 8 to 12%. And looking at cost drivers for this year, the known and measurable cost increases included in the 2025 review were increased labor costs, increased fuel costs, particularly impacted by sunsetting of compressed natural gas credits, which impacted about 70% of the franchisees in the urban area, and a 5.5% increase in the Metro waste disposal fee, or the tip fee. So it's good to pause here and touch on the tip fee, as this fee makes about 25% of the cost to provide garbage and recycling services to residents and businesses. The Metro tip fee, or solid waste fee, is set annually by Metro as part of their budget process. And this tip fee is charged to solid waste franchisees when they unload materials at a transfer station. For 2025, Metro approved a 5.5% increase in disposal expenses. This year's increase is lower than years past and is lower than the range determined as part of the fee predictability methodology established in 2022, which set fees ranging from 7% to 7.9% between 2020 and 2027. So that 5.5% is lower than the fee predictability. When this year's costs are considered, a fee increase is warranted to maintain returns at the target margin and maintain the margin for franchise owners as this revenue allows for investments in trucks and equipment, payment of management and administrative costs, and provides a reasonable rate of return for collection companies. As Dan noted, the Solid Waste Commission, which is the advisory body of all things solid waste, met on May 8th to review the annual review. The commission voted 6-0 to accept the review and recommend a fee increase be forwarded to you for your consideration. The proposed fees are presented in attachment 4 and represent a 2 to 4.5% increase in cart and container collection, depending on the service zone and the service level. For the majority of residential customers, this increase will be in the range of $1.20 to $1.30 per month. If the proposed increase is approved, the estimated margin for cart and container is 10.48%, and the margin for drop box service is 10.67%. So placing both of those almost right at that 10% target. Without a fee increase, the estimated margin for cart and container is 9%, and the estimated drop box service is 9.8%, both of which are within the acceptable range but don't quite hit that 10% target. This year, we also review costs and fees related to the county's transfer station. Our transfer station is located east of the city of Sandy, and it's a small drop-off facility serving about 30,000 customers a year for self-haul of garbage and recycling. The last adjustment to transfer station fees was approved and made effective by the board July 1 of 2023. So similar to cost increases impacting collectors, transfer station continues to be impacted by increasing labor and increasing disposal. So to mitigate these costs, staff are recommending a fee increase. These increases are presented in attachment 5, and they propose an increase in the per can fee from $8.70 per can to $9, and then increases to the cubic yard charge for household waste, increase to the cost of processing demolition waste, and handling fees for small tires, refrigerators, freezers, and air conditioners, particularly due to the refrigerants in those materials. Based upon the Solid Waste Commission's recommendation, there are 5 options for board consideration today, and these are broken apart between the collection fees and then the transfer station fees. And these options are presented in your packet. With the goal of making small adjustments to fees as costs increase, which maintains consistency and prevents large increases in the future, the Solid Waste Commission today respectfully recommends option 2, which is an approved collection and transfer station fee increases to be effective July 1 of 2025. With that, we are happy to support your deliberation and answer any questions you may have.
All right, colleagues, questions? Comments? Martha?
Very straightforward.
All right. Commissioner Savas.
So I'm looking at the latter part of the packet with things like mattresses and heavy waste and so forth. And it looks like those fees are, with an exception of the drop box, that those increases are marginal compared to the upper portion where it's more like 10-something% with the proposed increase. So is there, why is there a disparity between those amounts?
Just to clarify, you're looking at attachment 5, and that's the Clackamas County Transfer Station current fees, correct?
Well, look at attachment 4 and 5. So if you look at attachment 4, for example, it's 2%, 3%, so on, with the exception of a 42.9 for the drop box fee. So why are those smaller amounts than the 10% you're recommending?
Well, we probably would have to have somebody come up and answer with the specificity of the question you've got. Rick?
afternoon, Commissioners. Good morning. Welcome, Chair Roberts and Commissioner Helm. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
So you're talking about the kind of the collection fees, which are in Attachment 4, Commissioner? And
Yeah, this disparity between the increase recommended in attachment 3 and 4, for example. Let's simplify it for at least this part.
Right, so those are, the 3 and 4 are the collection fees, so the folks driving down the road picking things up. The other, Attachment 5, is at our transfer station. So those fees they're kind of incremental in their amounts, but they're, larger percentage. And you'll notice, the $7 increase on the heavy waste, and that's to bring the minimum up so that it corresponds to the number of cans that are allowed, so that the minimum isn't lower than, a certain number of cans. I think it's 3.
Okay, I'll restate it. Maybe I wasn't clear, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
So the disparity between a 10% increase on attachment 3 and on attachment 4, those increases are more like 2 and 3%. Far right column of attachment 4.
Okay.
Why is the disparity between attachment 3 at 10% roughly and the right column of 3 to 4% roughly on attachment 4?
I apologize, Commissioner. I'm not sure where the 10%.
Are you looking at the-
increase is.
Attachment 3, showing a return on revenues of
Return on
10%.
Okay.
With the fee and projected fee increases, is that,
That's a cumulative.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, yes, I'm sorry, I had my attachments covered up, sorry about that. So when we're looking at attachment 3, we're looking at that composite that is of all the collectors and kind of measuring the financial health of the system, right? So collectively, their operating margin is going to be in that 10% range, that 8 to 12% range. Then if you get to attachment 4, it's the incremental increase in the fee that we're suggesting to get to that 10%.
Per service.
Per each individual service. Is that,
well, okay, so the typical household customer is reflected best in what of the attachments? Which of the attachments?
the attachment 4 and 5, 4 and, what is it?
Probably 4.
Yep, it's 4, 1 and 2, sorry, I didn't have that. So yes, attachment 4 is the increase on the individual households. And then collectively, of all of the customers that we have that fall into these categories, you put their revenue on what the current costs to run the system are, and that's where you get that 10%.
So if you look at attachment 4, you can see that it's broken up by areas, urban, rural, and it's also broken up by type of service. And these are optional services that you can ask for. So it's different sizes of cans, things of that nature. So I can't remember, what's our 32? Is that normal? So like if the most common service provided is probably that 32-gallon can that's there. And so if you want to, like, the most frequent or utilized service, so you can see that's the most relative impact to the majority of the customers that are being served in the urban area would be that $1.25 increase.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, so you said 32-gallon, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so my chart says $1.30. Were you just mistaken? Just so I know we're on the same part of the page here.
So on attachment 4, which is on 2 sides, so we have the urban zone and the rural zone, so up there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So, just say
Talks
rural,
about-
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's,
Same
believe me.
attachment, different side of the page.
Yeah, different side of the page.
They have them side by side on the screen here. It's
Yeah,
it's
oh,
easier to read
okay.
here.
Yeah, that's much easier
Yeah.
to read. Oh, yeah.
Right. Do you have any other questions, Paul?
Yeah, I think what's happening is my I see it now. So the way this is displaying on my iPad is a little bit bizarre. All right, got it.
Commissioner Helm.
First of all, I just want to say, Rick, your place rocks, because I've been using your service for like 30 years at my house and almost 20 at my business, and your customer service, your responsiveness has just been amazing, and I have really appreciated your service, and you guys do a great job.
The folks behind me appreciate you saying that, Commissioner. Thank you.
They do. Well, it is. You run a very tight ship, and I love that. The presentation we had just before we went to lunch was a survey research company, and they are out asking people in Clackamas County what their biggest concerns are, which is inflation, which is money, obviously. And I had asked staff earlier, if we do not approve this increase, where are you at? And they said you're within the margins, but it's the low end and stuff. And I don't know, I just kind of want to, talk about that a little bit, because people are really strapped right now, and I feel that we're all doing more with less, and it's tough. And do you have a low-income program or anything? It's I know, service providers like Sunrise Water and other places have, programs in place, so it's tough, especially for the elderly, who can't haul their own garbage. It is less expensive, but just talk to me about that a little bit.
So we do have in our three-year plan, a regional plan to work on a kind of a low-income program. We haven't started working on that yet. We do have some experience or, looking at some of our regional partners, and they have done that, so we're going to learn from them. We have certain challenges in the county that cities don't have, right? They have centralized water, that sort of thing, so an easier way, or they may already have a mechanism for reaching out to people. So we're kind of looking at those challenges and down the road, but that is in our work plan in the future, so we are considering that. And, we take that into consideration, obviously, when we're looking at this. That's who we're doing the work for, so we really try to keep it at a minimum. We're really just looking at the known and measurable things that make up a considerable amount of the costs that the collectors have to take on, that they have no choice in, whether it's, contracted labor or the disposal at other facilities that they don't have control over. So those are kind of what we're presenting today, not overall inflation increases or anything like that, but just looking at those expenses, so.
And just as an estimate, how much do you think labor costs have gone up?
Actually, 2 years ago, they went up significantly higher just because of some, just because of some contractual things and playing catch up, right? About a little catch up, and so they played catch up. But now they're back into the right around 3% range, so it's a little more reasonable.
Okay.
And I guess if I could just speak to your question, we come up to you, to this board, to have discussions around a variety of different things, fees and rates and things of that nature. And I think one of the approaches that we really try to instill in that rate discussion are small adjustments to these rates. Because what happens is if we don't do small adjustments to these rates, you might see large adjustments to those rates. And it's I don't want to say it's almost a death by a thousand cuts, because they're little bitty adjustments. But for everything we hear from the community, from our fees for our building services and things like that, is like minimal adjustments here and there are much more tolerable than larger significant adjustments we may have. Just sharing that information with you.
Agreed.
Comments?
I'm gonna take another stab at this. I'm sorry if I'm distracted. I had a difficult lunch. Let's put it that way. Not the food, but a conversation.
Concerned you're looking at me when you say that.
So my mind's not as clear as I would like. So going back to the urban 32-gallon, $1.25, what is the rate today?
The rate today
Today.
is $39.05.
Okay, there it is.
Left-hand column.
And then it's going up to 40.3.
Raising $1.25.
$1.25, yeah.
So the lion's share, again, going back, who, at the 10% level, is it the commercial side that has seen the largest increase proportionally of all these services?
Not, well, let's see. Percentage-wise, actually, they're pretty close, is what we had seen. So we try to keep those, they're pretty close. But the commercial, you know, in a dollar figure, obviously it's going to be a little bit more, but it's running right about about at the most expensive that we have on here, the example is about $30 a month.
So I
But
want to make sure.
proportionally, I see what you're saying.
Terminology is important. So the 10 that you're referring to is the margin, is the operating margin. If you look at the fee changes and the adjustments on this page 4, you can see that the majority of them are in that high 2 to 3 range, you know, give or take. There are some larger adjustments, drop boxes and things like that but percentages are important. So for example, if you look on the, I think it's the back of attachment 4, if you look at like drop box rental, it's like, yeah, it went up 42.9%, but it went from $7 to $10. And so, although percentages are important, the actual dollar amount is equally important in what the true cost is.
Yeah, you know, and I appreciate that. I think what I'm struggling with actually is that, you know, I don't care what's this or it's Wes or whatever rate-based increases, people are like, oh, it's only a buck, it's only a buck, it's only a buck. And every year it's a buck. And then it compounds, and it compounds, and it compounds. And I've asked, for example, Mr. Geist, by the way, over the last 15 years, how many of those, what's the total amount of those increases? You know, that's because it got a multiplier effect, right? And while this, I understand, and we've had this conversation before on fees before, while I understand that the incremental aspects of raising the fees a little bit is far better than waiting and then stalling and then raising them in one big fell swoop. But I'm really trying to understand why in these last few years, we've done quite a few increases, right? And they've been, I'd say they have been, and we're downstream of that from Metro, the Metro fees, right? It's kind of like a pass-through, right? So is our target literally 10% composite or, because we're above that, and I saw the language of 8 to 12, right? So if we status quo, we're still in there, right?
Correct.
Correct.
And so these rates, how do they reflect to the rates that Metro's charging on a percentage basis? Is it the same? I mean, does it equate out the same? I know that's difficult, right? Because the tipping fees, all of that, you know, I'm just kind of figuring out how you take the Metro increases and how that folds into these numbers here.
So it's about, so Commissioner Savas, it's about 25% of the total cost is the disposal cost. So of that total rate, it's about 25%. So while the Metro tip fee is increasing by about 5.5%, we're not, right? So it's just because it's a component, a smaller component of all of the costs. I mean, it's still a significant component and it drives things.
And that has been a fee that's driven things significantly more in the past.
Yeah.
We talked about that fee predictability. You've been around the last couple of years, the whole dialogue around why is the fee increasing originally, and what is that being used for? And then the discussion was, because I think they had a desire to keep it within like that 7% kind of range, give or take. And we had years, I think last year it went up 11, even though their staff recommended like 7.5. And that's around, you had the presentation that was here earlier about their capital construction plan, their long-term plans, and it's like, show me a plan on what you're going to look to build with the money that you're collecting and the costs that you're securing. And that's kind of the effort that's underway now. But we're pleased to report it's been less than we've seen historically at 5%, 5.5%.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to associate our conversation we had as a board with Wes. Mr. Geist and company, it happened to be that there were 3 of us here, and only to get that across the board, I ended up going against my own grain and voting for the increase as opposed to increasing the SDCs. So I'm just being mindful on a household basis that this is just another buck and a half or more,
Absolutely.
depending on where you are, and I'm just concerned about the collective aspect of it. I mean,
Sure.
it's just compounding, and I don't know what's going to happen to the transportation bill. I don't know what's going to happen to other things, but everything just keeps on going up and up and up. And the difficult part with this is I wish we could find a way to push back on the people that's passing the costs on us. And anyone here from Metro today?
No, sir.
Okay, speaks for itself. Thank you.
All right. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I move, colleagues, that we approve the collection and transfer station fee increases as recommended by the Solid Waste Commission effective July 1st, 2025.
And is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Commissioner Schrader's moved to select option number 2 as far as approving collection and transfer station fee increased as recommended by Solid Waste Commission effective July 1st, 2025. And it's been seconded by Commissioner Helm. Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Savas.
No.
Commissioner Helm.
No.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Chair Roberts.
Aye, so,
Motion fails 2-2, Mr. Chair.
right. So Gary, what's next?
So I guess no action means really option 1, that there are going to be no changes to the fees.
Yep.
You could either make that motion or based on the inaction of that motion,
Based on
that is
the
what will
action,
stand.
let's just-
So no change.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners.
All right, thank you. Gary, what is next?
Thank you. The next policy session is Office of Economic Development Business Development Grant Program, year number 2. Presenting is Transportation and Development again, Dan Johnson, the Director, and Laura Edmonds, the Manager of the Office of Economic Development. Go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. We are here to not talk about a fee increase with this. We are here to talk about funding, grant funding that we're looking to get secured. For those of you who have been part of this discussion over the last couple of years, Laura has joined Clackamas County and is really looking to rebuild and re-enhance and operationalize some of the desires from the board to go out there to support small business. And this is one of the programs that she and her group of amazing staff have developed, is this grant program before you today. This would, if approved by the board, this would be the second year in a row that we would be issuing grants of this nature. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura to give you more detail about the program and the requests before you today.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me before you, Chair Roberts, Commissioners. Honored to see you all here today. So I'll kind of give you a little bit of the scope on what we had done, how this came to fruition. So again, Dan mentioned, so this would be year 2 of the Business Development Grant Program, and the proposal is totaling $600,000. We gave $600,000, allocated $600,000 last year as well. So because of the success of the program and also just the volume of applicants that we got last year for this, we are recommending year 2 with using the same process and the same methodologies we did before. So back on April 17th of '24, the board directed Office of Economic Development to develop the Business Development Grant Program, awarding the $600,000 annually. And what that is to do is to invest in local businesses to ensure their ongoing success in the county. So staff developed it's a competitive grant process to provide the funding to existing traded sector businesses, and that was to relocate and/or expand operations in Clackamas County. What we did was that we set min-maxes, so the maximum award to any one grantee was $100,000. When we put this NOFO out, a Notice of Funding Opportunity, we received in 34 total applications, and they were looking at over $1.9 million, because we don't have that kind of money, and some of these weren't traded sector. What we did was the review and recommendation committee that was formed to evaluate all eligible applications. They made the final projection identifying 17 total qualified applicants. That was almost $1.2 million. And again, we had only approved $600,000. So because we couldn't fund all, we had to, through our evaluation process, we had to identify those that were going to have the highest impact to their business and the economic vitality of the region or the county. So we narrowed it down to 11 projects that were funded. Of those, they were completed February 13th of '25. But due to unforeseen circumstances, the 11th grantee couldn't accept their $50,000 award, so that was just retained for future allocation. So here we are, year 2, coming back asking, because what we want to do is we want to go ahead and continue doing a second round and supporting traded sector. And that, one, because there's a lot of activity going on in the economy right now. The traded sector are those that are providing the bulk of our jobs at reasonable wages, and we want to make sure that we're continuing to do provide great business support to help encourage the growth and success of those industries in the region. So in your attachments, I think what we want to do is, when we look at the options here today, we would like to be able to ask that you direct staff to move forward the second year of this program as is. A couple of the things that we learned from this, is that as we refine this program, we learned one valuable lesson, was that to create a wait list. Because the one applicant who couldn't accept the award, that wasn't approved. So what we did was we learned a valuable lesson in making sure that we create then a secondary wait list of those additional applicants that would then be considered in line for the round of funding that couldn't be accepted by a previously approved applicant. Some great news from this and the research, because these applicants are reporting to us on a regular basis from here on out on their success of the implementation of their project. From this, right off the get-go, there were 7 new hires as of May 6 for these programs. And of those, the average hourly wage of the 6 of the 7 new hires was about $24.95 an hour. So pretty reasonable wages. 2 of those hires are averaging $31 to $38 an hour, and those are welders. So just to give you an idea of some of the instant success that we've had from this program so far. So with that said.
So this is one of those small wins kind of thing. It's an investment in small business around Clackamas County. If you go through the list, the year 1 list, it's pretty informative. I mean, you see it's capital focused. So what does small business need in a lot of these areas is a little hand up to either one. Some of these resulted in relocating to Clackamas County. Some were specific requests that improve service. Some were specific requests around upgrading service, new equipment, things of that nature. So it's investing in these smaller businesses that are out there to ensure, one, because all of you know the discussion they're having around other areas of this community, retention is important. As important as growth. And so it's retaining these businesses that we have here, helping them be successful, and also growing additional businesses in and around the community. So these dollars, I can tell you, these dollars are included in the proposed fiscal year 25-26 budget that'll be under consideration by the board next week, I believe. And those have been budgeted and set aside. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Helm.
So I see you have, this is a great program. I love it. There's a lot of businesses that I know need just sometimes a little bit of help, sometimes a lot of help. It's great to go out and help in the community. The verification of investment and improvements are required within 1 year. How do you verify? Do you go out and see if they really bought the new truck, and you ask for a receipt, and all that? Good.
They have to prove if it was a capital acquisition, they have to prove it. The date on the invoice, everything will have to be verified from the date of funding. In the criteria that we put together in our process manual, we verify that no acquisition was to be made before a specified point in time during Yorga's approval process for the grants. And so we verify it. And then we are also we're capturing videos from these businesses. So part of that whole business outreach strategy, the videos, we're starting with these grantees. So we're going to be capturing the successful story from this money that's been invested wisely into those businesses.
Did you find that they voluntarily gave you their verification, or did you have to ask most of them?
No, they're very excited to do it.
Oh, I think it's wonderful.
We haven't
Good.
had one of them that has pushed back at all. And then the validation also, we're collecting the data as we go. So they'll have reporting requirements at specified point in time, even up to the 2 years, so that we can then verify and track the success. But also, the return on our investment is going to be important for us because we want to make sure that we want to know what the reward is to this organization and their employees. And so they'll be able to tell us their process improvements, if they've been able to harvest new product lines and be able to, expand their market share into their industry. There's going to be a lot of data collected as we go, and so we'll paint a real good ROI picture for us, and it's proving the investment is a solid investment.
I love it.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, this is a great program, and I think some of the businesses I'm going to suggest as colleagues that we visit are the ones that have received the grants, because I think that'd be great for us to see in action if we do that. The second thing is I'd like to suggest that you put this in for an award at the National Association of Counties. We usually do get a number of awards every year for the innovative things we've done, and I think this one would be right up there. And I think it'd be another, validation of that this business development program is really an excellent idea and is a case study that could be shared around the country. So,
Commissioner Savas.
So when it says grant, just curious about any kind of scale with regards to the money that they put in. Is this like a match? How does that relationship go between their investment and our investment?
I love that question. Part of the requirements is that they have to have at least 100% match.
okay.
So they have to match. If they exceed that match, that's great. And they inform us of that. But they have to match it, and then they have to prove their match. So through the application process, we structured it in such a way that they had to provide the documentation up front to verify that they actually had the match waiting. Or if they were going to be applying for, let's say, another state or federal grant, and they had to prove the match that they were applying for as well. That didn't happen in this case, but it is it's part of the manual process that they have to provide proof and evidence.
Yeah, so, I know that taxable, assets that are taxable, personal property, if you will, in that regard. So do we have will we have an outcome or a number which shows the total investment made by these dollars? We know what ours is, obviously, right? So what is theirs and how much of that is taxable? So, where's the ROI? We hire someone, those payroll taxes go to the state, right? You build assessed value in the urban renewal district, it shows up on the property tax totals, right? I'm looking for the same kind of metric here.
We're collecting that data in their reporting. So because most of the funding right now has been only recently received based on timing, right? So they've invested. So what we are doing is we are collecting that data so that we can report it back to you. And they're going to be providing that through a specific financial report to provide the evidence of the return. Yep.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Yeah, I just had one question, and that was, now, correct me if I'm wrong, this is year 2 of this? This is right.
This will be year 2 of it, correct?
Yeah. And so I think it would help me in the future. This is a perfect list. And I see you have the locations on a map on the second page. We actually have a meeting with all the mayors and cities coming up. And if we had a column off to the right of this one sheet that showed what city it was, and even including last year, to really help highlight the work that's going on throughout the county. I think that's really nice to see that you're doing it across the county, and that's trying to benefit all the cities. So I know Gary and I have a meeting coming up not too long. That'd be helpful for me. So I think it's fantastic and great job. And so I think we all love it. Maybe someone's ready to make a motion on it.
I move we select option 1, direct staff to advance the business development grants and the proposed criteria and funding as presented.
Second.
Right. Commissioner Helm has moved to select option 1, direct staff to advance business development grants with the proposed criteria and funding as presented. Commissioner Schrader is second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Helm.
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0, Mr. Chair.
And thank you both very much. Great
Thank you
job.
so much.
Great job.
Appreciate it.
Very excited.
Chair,
to see
and the
it.
seconds you asked, it's actually already on the document, on the attachment. It shows the cities where the grants were provided.
I know, but it doesn't say,
He's,
yeah, but it doesn't say where the cities are, or where the businesses are located.
Oh,
It's on-
which businesses are in which city? Is that what you're asking?
yeah.
Okay, got it.
So he has the map. I was
Yeah,
just.
we saw the map, but it doesn't say
Does it
which,
make it
I don't
easy?
know which one's in Estacada,
Understood.
and, yeah,
It's-
same here. I know.
All right.
know.
I figured
You'll
you
get it.
did.
I was looking for the same thing.
Your final policy session today is building violations and dog services code amendments. Jeff Munns, Assistant County Counsel, will present. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chair. Here for some sort of housekeeping amendments to the county code as well as to our Appendix B for fines related to building code violations. First off, we'd be proposing to amend Chapter 207 for a compliance hearings officer, a portion of code dealing with citations that can be issued in cases of building code violations. In the past, this had been exempted or accepted from our code for some reason. The best I can determine is sort of a misunderstanding as to whether we can issue citations in those building code violations due to the interpretation of the statute that allows for the fines and fees associated with those violations. And so to correct both of those, we have the modification of 207 as well as the modification of Appendix B. And it's really based upon ORS 455-895 sub 2 that deals with what the maximum penalty can be in the case of a building code violation. Currently, it's a $750 minimum or $1,000 for the maximum penalty for the violation. The statute allows for the maximum penalty to be $5,000 or $1,000 a day in the case of a continuing violation. Most of these violations are continuing violations. And in the worst cases where somebody builds a house or builds an extensive addition without any permits, it's a pretty unsafe situation. So in cases of those life safety situations, we wanted to increase this violation to match our other violations for things like solid waste, zoning violations, and the like. So it's consistent across the board, as well as being more consistent with state law. And then in the case of dog services, we have two amendments. One, to extend the waiver of the licensing fee in cases of service animals involving individuals with mental impairments, not just physical impairments. This would be done to more closely comply with requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the second change would be housekeeping and to match our service provisions in code enforcement, which is to mail citations by first-class mail. We find that the certified mail ones don't get picked up, get returned, where first-class mail goes through, people get the notifications and then can react appropriately and cure these violations. So with that, then the three options would be to direct us to schedule a public hearing for an ordinance to change the language in chapters 207 and 501. We would then also present a resolution to increase the fines and fees, because that's what's required in County Code Section 101-090. Second option would be to provide an alternative direction, and the third is to take no action at this time. Staff recommendation is option 1, to direct us to schedule the public hearing for the ordinance for the code language change, and then the resolution for the fine change. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right. Questions? Looks like I might have one. So say somebody did just like you explained, did an addition that wasn't permitted, right? And so let me be correct on this. So they're notified, and if they didn't tear it down or in a timely manner, that fee would be $1,000 per day until they had it torn back to the original condition. Is that what I kind of hear you saying?
Potentially. Typically the way our practice practice actually works is somebody will call in with a potential violation to code enforcement. You'll get this report. And so then the code enforcement staff will send a letter, they call it an alleged letter, to the property owner and say, hey, we received this report that you've made this addition. We don't see any permits in our system. Will you please contact us in so many days to work through the process of abating this violation? Put them in contact with building code staff and so on to say, hey, you're going to need to have these types of permits, and then here's the process to get those inspected. And we get a lot of those, and I would say the vast majority are resolved at that stage. People find out and go, oh, okay, they come in and work with staff. If they don't do it, then they get a notice of violation, after that, a citation, after that, a notice of a hearing, and so on and so forth. We have a lot of steps to work with them to get this in compliance. At worst case, we go to a contempt of court case where we've already sued them, and even then, we work with them to get them in touch with people, to get the inspections done, and we have one that's clearing up this week that was going to go to a hearing soon. So it's a lot of interaction to get them to.
Okay, to get to that point.
Get to that point, and hopefully get them to just get this permitted and keep it safe.
You have a comment.
Which would ideally be less costly than $1,000 a day.
That's what I was
Fine.
gonna say.
Yes,
Ideally,
exactly.
yes,
It
you
sounds
know.
like you've bent over backwards, right?
We do a lot.
To help make them compliant.
Yeah, if somebody calls in and says, hey, look, I saw them put in, I see a vent sticking out of their garage, never had one before, where maybe they put a heater in. Well, it's a mechanical permit, so it's pretty simple. Call them up, they come in, they get the mechanical permit, get it inspected, and they're done, if that's allowed. Electrical and whatnot. It's, oftentimes it's neighbors or somebody that, hey, I got my permits, why didn't they get theirs? But, we work with them. It's more about compliance than it is to be punitive.
Right, okay, good to know.
Right, that's what I was
Yeah,
concerned
punitive,
about.
that's, yeah.
Any other questions?
Just a basic question on the Appendix B at the very top. You got outlined in red, the change, which looks like it went from $750 to $1,000. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the minimum was $750, and the maximum was $1,000 before. And so what we're doing is tracking the statute more closely with the $1,000 per day or maximum fine, in that case, $5,000. But here, we're proposing $3,500 to be consistent with our other maximum fines.
Other maximum fines of who?
Oh, for other types of code enforcement violations, like it
Okay,
could be.
within the county, is what I mean?
Yeah, so that our fines across the board countywide are similar.
Okay.
Where state law allows it to be a little higher at $5,000, but the staff wanted to propose this to match our other fines.
Okay.
Sounds reasonable.
Do we need a motion?
All right, yes, I do, Martha.
Okay, I move we direct staff to schedule a public hearing on the proposed amendments in Chapter 2.07, 5.01, and Appendix B of the County Code as shown in the attached revisions.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Commissioner Schrader's moved to select option 1, direct staff to schedule a public hearing on the proposed amendment to Chapter 2.07 and 5.01 in Appendix B of the County Code as shown on the attachment revisions. Commissioner Helmuth, second that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Helm.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0, Mr. Chair.
And again, thank you for your hard work. Gary, is there anything else today we need to address?
That is it for today.
All right, well, if there's no other business, this concludes our afternoon, and on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners, thank you all who joined us, and we are adjourned.